welcome to another episode of Logan and Hops. And this is a special episode. We have an actual producer and editor now.
We're growing!
We're growing! In addition to Dan, Alex, Tim, and myself, we have Logan. Thanks for helping us out, Logan.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
He's not used to it yet. He's waving.
Doesn't realize.
Actually, yeah, it occurred to me. I'm waving at the mic.
It's been a while for him. It's been a while.
It felt more appropriate with the wave, saying hello. I don't know.
Don't worry, this is a faux visual podcast. We do bring up things people can't see.
Okay. Once we put this on YouTube, he'll be fine.
It's the polite thing to do.
Please don't.
So in this episode, we will mostly be talking about ciders, and then also some non-ciders. That
some very non-ciders.
Didn't pick up ciders for our cider episode.
Even though he said he was going to get ciders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a real dick
Hey,
move.
I got my ciders for the show. Look at you two.
Again, Dan, it's an audio podcast, it's not a visual podcast.
The two that spoke last, Chris and Alex.
I'm not going to be upset at Alex for what he brought.
No, he brought us some delicious treehouse. And
No, the treehouse was not
Trillium?
mine.
No,
That was
Logan.
Logan.
Oh, that's Logan. That's right.
Our producer has
The
supplied
producer.
the treehouse.
That's right. That was my fault.
Yeah.
Logan came in swinging.
Yeah, I thought I'd make an impact on my first, is that way in case I do a crappy job here. At least the beers were good. Maybe they'll still have me back.
Well, so we just finished up Haze from Treehouse, and I don't know if we're going to continue on with Treehouse as of right now, or if we're going to move forward and drink some of the other stuff we brought.
I vote continue on with Treehouse.
See,
I do
We're on a
too
roll,
because
might as
the
well.
bottom of this can says "Shine on you, hazy diamond."
All right, well, you heard the man.
It's a sexy can open.
oh yeah.
So these are
Go
all
for it.
just a little over a month old. And what are we doing next, Tim?
We're doing the Bright from Treehouse. Passing it along, and I feel like this would be a good time to start we have a somewhat planned debate in mind over a contentious issue.
I thought you were going
amongst
to say
craft-
trip for
No.
future episodes.
Yes, we do. We do want to do a trip up to New England that is being discussed at the moment.
Your brand hops.
Let's not call
Does-
it New England.
That's a good point.
Does
Massachusetts.
Boston?
Just Massachusetts.
The East Coast.
Yes. But on top of that, there is a contentious issue amongst people of craft beer interest, and that is when our favorite craft breweries eventually bite the bullet or decide to sell out to a major or macro brewery. And the conditions of how it happens, is it okay? Do we not drink the beer anymore in protest? Or is it one of those things where, well, it's still the same recipes, we still like the stuff. For example, Goose Island is a big one that comes to mind with I believe they're bought by AB InBev. And you're talking about, okay, the Goose Island Bourbon County Stout, do you still drink it? I've tasted it, it's still delicious, but they're owned by Anheuser-Busch. Thoughts?
Especially on that one. This is my almost only thing for the big guys buying out the little guys, and that's the fact that who of us would actually know of Bourbon County Stout if they hadn't been bought out that long ago and given them the capital to further their distribution. It would have taken a few more years, most likely, for them to get really big and start distributing that much of that type of beer.
So they had the capital to produce more Bourbon County Stout, which means they can distribute more Bourbon County Stout, which means people like us who don't live over there can drink Bourbon County Stout.
Exactly.
That is a good point.
I mean, for us, we were all into the beer scene that we actually knew about it before Goose Island actually went down that road. And I don't think any of us were actually mad because when you see Bourbon County out, everyone's still there. It doesn't affect things, but it's when you see someone who starts off so small and they're still doing their thing and they're doing it well and people look forward to it. And it's like, and then all of a sudden you find out the next day, oh, this company bought them. Or Anheuser bought them, or anything like that, and you're like, why? I was always going to buy them regardless. But the thing was, maybe it's distribution, maybe it's they weren't seeing the pull, and they just needed that little bit of oomph. And in that case, I can't get mad at them for wanting to succeed in this industry. That's the goal. I mean, you're trying to get your product to as many people as possible, but you also got to keep the freshness in mind. So when you see small breweries that are, start off on one side of the coast, and we all beer trade. What ends up happening? Time weakens the beer. Flavors change. If you have someone who can get it out to, Midwest, West Coast faster, your profits are going to go up. So
Yeah, for me, I over being bought or even merging or really anything along those lines, I don't care in and of itself. So really, I just want good beer or good beer selection, and if that continues, fine. If it doesn't, as a result of that, then I think it was a bad strategic decision by the company to sell out. If it led to lower quality for whatever reason. But if they continue making good beer and good beers, like good beer selection, innovation, things like that, I'll still keep buying it.
I think what the fear is that when you see a brewery buy in, sell out, whatever you want to call it into a bigger brewery, is that they feel that everything's going to change. Because unfortunately, what we've seen from bigger breweries, and I'm afraid of what we're going to see in the future with a company that's moving to Buffalo, is that when they try to do a craft version of a beer, they cheapen out, because what they usually do is they are providing cheap beer for customers for consumption. I'm not saying it's bad beer, but you're not, the scale of what you're providing, the recipe is the same, and it's consistency. And I've always said consistency is the hardest thing in craft brewing. But you're not designed for that. So you're trying to now enter a market, and you need those guys to do it, and you can't. So when you hear that, you're afraid, they're going to take the recipe. They're going to do this. It's like, I think these guys are trying to figure out what is the secret of what those guys are doing, because they can't figure it out.
Yeah, because, I mean, some of those bigger guys have done some things that are a little out there, but they just don't always turn out to be that good. So that's why they're buying the little guys to get that creativity, to get that craft of brewing.
But mostly it hasn't been to take those. I mean, they don't want to cannibalize the new business that they just bought. No. It's mostly to keep that as a segment that does things that their main properties don't do or can't do.
Mm-hmm. Or so that they don't have to do it.
Or so that Budweiser doesn't have to come out with their own version of IPA.
Was it Budweiser or Labatt
that make good IPAs and let them do their thing?
Was it Budweiser or Labatt that ended up doing that little craft series? They had two of them. One was like a maple, and one was that bourbon barrel aged.
Yeah,
and it was
Labatt.
It was Labatt. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to go out and say, listen, sports fan. I drink a Labatt's, whatever, when I'm at the hockey games, when I'm at the Bills games, it's fine, whatever.
Playing pond hockey.
Exactly. When Buffalo's about to get the Labatt Ale House in, and they're specifically gearing it towards... They were
just putting up the signs today.
Exactly, but they're gearing it towards trying to focus on that craft market. That bourbon barrel beer, whatever they put, was... I could taste the wood chips and liquid smoke in it. It was a cheap product. It was gross. You took your Battle of Bats, dumped in a bunch of liquid smoke, and called it a day. And I was like, that's what you've got?
and that gets to a point that is big for me, at least, with this discussion, is let the market determine. If a big brewery wants to make their own barrel or pseudo barrel aged beer and put it out, and it tastes bad, and it fails, then the market will...
Well, you don't see it anymore, so I think it did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it failed spectacularly. And Labatt has a pretty solid house of other breweries that they like do their thing.
Exactly.
Another thing, this kind of goes with maybe someone, or myself who's into the more of the punk rock scene growing up, is that kind of cool quality that craft beer has, where it's like the underdog, it's the unsigned, kind of like when your favorite band eventually signs on to a major record label. Like, that's kind of the equivalent. It's different. It's a very different thing because the music tends to change way different than, say, your beer. The beer is not going to change. The Goose IPA still tastes the same to me as when I first had it when I went to Chicago, went to the brewery before they were bought out. Whereas, like, some bands sign on the major record album and all of a sudden the next album comes out and it's like, wow, that was crap. Why'd they do that? But I think with beer...
Because they got a producer.
Yeah, right.
You
What are we doing to
sellouts.
ourselves? Crap. Where's our paycheck then? Usually selling out comes with a paycheck. Where's Real Big Fish? They got a song about this.
We are horrible at selling it out.
Yeah, crap. But no, I get worried because there was a point brought up when Wicked Weed was bought out. There was a point brought out that what happens when a macro brewery buys out a microbrewery, they then can also fill up shelf space with that micro beer they just bought and take up more space that cannot then be used for microbreweries, which that is a problem that I have because I like seeing it, as you said, Chris, to let the market decide. Well, if they're buying up all the space, now the libertarian free market capitalist in me says they should be able to by law, but at the same time as the microbrew, craft brew enthusiast that I am, I want those other breweries to have a chance so we can see more of the local stuff on shelves before Goose IPA and I think Blue Point and Wicked Weed is now available here, which I finally tried a Freak of Nature. It was good, but I'm not going to buy any more of it because on principle it bothers me that they sold out.
See, that is a solid point, but I think that has to do more with the current 3-tier system for beer distribution that we have, where you have to have the brewery, distributor, and then the seller. Mm-hmm. I think that has to do more with that and distributors basically selling up that space rather than just a big brewery doing it. Plus, it depends a lot on the region too. Yeah. I mean, here in Buffalo, we have enough bottle shops that. I don't think any Buffalo breweries that are canning or bottling their own beer having trouble finding some place to sell it.
It is different. I've definitely been coming from Maryland. There were places where I started to see more. All of a sudden, a shelf or an end cap that was full of, Flying Dog and Monocacy beer suddenly had Blue Point and Pyramid, which have both, and even like that, whatever that offshoot that Blue Moon is making.
Bad, aren't they?
Yeah.
Speaking of bad.
Yeah, I know. But it's just one of those things that you look at it and it's like, okay, I didn't want that. I liked Flying Dog. They're brewed here. That's what I want. And it was irritating. Double-edged sword.
Speaking of the market, like even if they do get that shelf space for a little bit, after a couple months, if that beer just sits there, that store is not going to buy more of it. They're just going to turn over the inventory and put in what does actually sell.
And maybe there's always the chance, just like a lot of us in a previous episode, we talked about how something that those offshoots of macro beer that tasted pretty good, like your Blue Moon, your Killian's, that's what led me to Sam Adams and Magic Hat, and then down the road into craft beer in a Southern Tier and other places. Whereas maybe that's also what this beer can do. Macro, like Anheuser-Busch's Elzian Brewery, which, again, that one bothers me because, what was it, the Super Bowl commercial where they came out, they had just bought Elzian, and then they made fun of the beer that they were just bought out making? Elysian, yeah. Sorry, I mispronounced that. My bad. But, yeah, it was just one of those things where, like, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you want people to still want your beer. Don't mock it.
So, the things that...
Sorry, Dan. More to say on this topic, but my glass is empty, so let's...
Mine is not, so I can keep talking.
Carry on.
Oh, we're drinking 4 different ones.
Oh, so yeah. Sexy. Carrying on with the Treehouse theme here, we have Doppelganger from Treehouse, which is, this one I've actually had, and it is fantastic. Like everything, I don't think I've had a Treehouse beer I have not liked.
Truth.
I mean, you guys can speak your truth about that. I don't think I can think
I
of
don't think I have either.
Not one.
I'm
Which
just
is rare.
a little disappointed there's no Julius.
There wasn't Julius in the fridge, man. I grabbed what I could. I don't know what to tell you. It cost me extra money tonight that I wasn't planning on spending, okay? So leave me alone. You're welcome.
It's working. So Tim, what you were saying about advertising.
Yes.
There was a recent string of commercials out by... I think. Oh, right. It was Bud Light, because of the Bud Night, which was a big thing with
Dilly Dilly.
Dilly Dilly.
Yes.
But anyway, they have a new one out where the king walks down to the bar and he's like, "Bud Light's for everyone." They cheer. The one guy's like, "Can I have a mead?" And like they just kind of goes on. I'm sure listeners have seen it.
Yeah.
Goes on like that for a while, and then the final slogan is like Bud Light for the many, not the few. Kind of like taking a shot at. This is for the majority of people, not those like uppity few. From an advertising perspective, I thought it was a brilliant ad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't, again, it's hard to, it's a smart move. Whenever I see one, when they buy up a good brewery, like Wicked Weed, for example, another one, like, it's just, no part of me is like, oh, that makes no sense, that's stupid. It makes perfect sense. I just don't like it. It feels dirty to me.
So, this goes back to, I understand that it goes back to the fear. And I think the fear is that the product that you love is going to cheapen and it's going to not be the same that you loved. But when you look at everything, unfortunately, we were talking about this earlier, whether it be a buyout, a sellout, whatever you want to call it, a merger, you're joining forces under a company name. So here's the thing. What companies actually own these breweries, the awareness of who actually owns what is vast. Mm-hmm. It is there are companies that I'm literally looking at a map. I didn't even know these breweries were together. So when I see this, I'm like, well, I still drink all these beers. Now the problem is though, when I'm looking at this map on my laptop of what's under AB and Bev, I've noticed one trend. All the beers, a lot of them that are associated with it, I associate with cheap. That's the thing. So I'm not disagreeing with you, Tim. I'm not agreeing with. I don't want to see anybody sell it because they're for sellout's sake, because they just want money. Mm-hmm. That's fine because I'll still buy your beer. But if the whole point is because I'm trying to make a product and I'm trying to get it to the people because you guys like it, I can't hate you for it.
Right. I got to throw something in here. Like that is honestly, that is one of the fears is that the beer is going to change. It's going to cheapen so they can spread it and so they can make more of it, blah, blah, blah. And that is one of the big fears because I had that happen to me. There was some red ale that I liked back when I was like in high school and then Miller Coors bought them and they're garbage.
You didn't know any better.
No, I was in high school a long time.
Oh, you held that?
One of the other things is something that Chris and Tim hit on, and it's that with this 3-tier distributor system, we like to say that, if it doesn't sell in the stores, once it sells out again, it's not going to get restocked. Well, the problem with that is some of these beer companies that own these small breweries and own the distribution are so big that they can force distributors to stock one thing if they want another. And they can force them to stock certain quantities of one thing if they want to buy any of another. And then the distributor is going to wind up having to do that same thing to the retailer. So not only is it that a major beer company bought a small brewer so they can put more of that on the shelf, but they also use it as like a hostage to put more of their macro beer on the shelves as well. And that I think is actually the bigger fear for me. Is they're using these buyouts to put pressure on distributors and in turn retailers to get their macro stuff on the shelf, especially now that they're reaching into so many different experimental little ones that are like this kind of almost craft that the macros are making, like Bud Light Orange, Bud Light Lime, or any of the other smaller labels that Labatt's or Miller Coors puts out that are like Traveler or something like that. They're not really craft beer. They originated from a macro brewery as an offshoot rather than being bought out or something like that. Honestly, to me, that's one of the bigger fear. And the 3-tier distributing system is not going away anytime soon.
No.
So, that's a big part of why that's a fear as well.
I agree. I very much dislike the 3-tier system, and I also very much agree it's not going anywhere anytime soon. But that is a good point. But that really, it doesn't it kind of just prolongs the inevitable, which is the beer still has to sell. So turnover, if it was just purely what sold and what didn't sell, would be a lot faster. But on these big breweries, they're still like AB and Bev. They're huge, but they still have to answer to investors. And if they have this whole brand new line of beer that isn't selling that well, that's going to be reflected on the bottom line, the quarterly statements. The investors are going to get pissed. They're going to stop making that, and it's not going to be on the shelves anymore.
Now, a question I have is, does it matter to you who buys out the particular brewery? Because as Dan and I are looking at this big chart or map here of all the different companies that own different breweries, like there are some, like you look at AB and Bev, and it's like, okay, a lot of those are not the stuff I was buying anyway, or even the ones that Guinness owns, or a couple others. But then you see like Duvel, they own a few, Boulevard. I still like Boulevard beer, but I also
Omegang.
I like those beers.
Exactly, we go every year.
So does
what
that
festival is that? I don't think I've heard that.
But I mean, if you look at something like Heineken, they own Sol, which is the only beer I think Mexicans drink. Oh no, there's Tecate.
Do they really drink that,
I
though?
don't think. No, I think that's what
Yeah,
we drink.
Pacifico, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But Heineken owns that. They own several companies. The thing I found on this map that I found was absolutely hilarious: Mitsubishi.
Yes,
Mitsubishi is known for freaking cars and air conditioning systems. They own Kirin. Kirin owns another 60. One being Brooklyn Beer. I was like, wait, what?
And the
21st
21st Amendment.
And 21st Amendment.
And these aren't full ownership in those,
No.
but they're listed on there if there's.
But it
any
trickles
certain
down
amount.
to who's
Well,
really
of
behind the
course.
money bags.
Exactly. It does.
Mitsubishi brings up another point is not necessarily. I mean, Mitsubishi, but really any Japanese company is going to be very efficient when it comes to operations. So if they can provide that streamlined operations to a company, and then I'm paying $6 for a pint of that beer instead of $7 for a pint, because that craft brewery doesn't have to spend as much on their own operations and like HR, IT, all that stuff. I mean, that's another benefit to me, honestly, as a beer consumer.
Yeah, and even, I mean, also a lot of these that are just, they're just on here random, or not randomly, but they're all organized. But it seems like this map doesn't really verify like how much, because some of them have only sold a percentage of their company. Like Founders, I know didn't completely sell out. I believe, is it 40 or 50% they sold?
I think
30.
it's a non-minority.
30?
30% because it actually gives you the
Say.
percentages.
Wow, we gotta share the link
So
to this
it's
map.
actually vinepair.com under booze-news. So, but they have booze news,
News.
and it's a
find.
craft brewery ownership chart. That if you wanted to take a look at it, then it does give you an interesting look on who's buying what out there and who actually has the impact on. And it kind of explains why you see the certain beers you do when you go to a store. But it also kind of gives you a sense of why you also have to then support local, support the craft industry. You're starting to see this rise in it's the independent craft logo on cans. And there's a reason behind that. It's because there's some companies out there that are trying to drown them out because they do have an impact. So
There's also a lot of consumers out there that don't know that a lot of these beers that they're buying are owned by the bigger guys.
Oh, yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely not. They have no
yeah,
idea.
there's no information for it.
And that's spreading around with the, was it independent craft beer? That logo that shows up on bottles or
Yep.
cans.
That's the one.
But you have to be approved to actually print that.
Yes. But I think that's a good thing because when it, I want to say it stops, but then at least it does. What I would say is then keep drinking whatever you like. There's nothing wrong with going out buying your favorite beer, depending on who it is. But also then remember, it's like if there is something out there that you do like, and you had it maybe last month, you're like, oh man, I really like this, and then you're like, I don't see it anymore. There might be a reason behind that, because someone else took it, and it's been replaced by something else because it sells better.
Now that, boys and girls, is how you have a civilized argument as an adult.
What do we got next, Alex?
This is Alter Ego, also from Treehouse.
All right, I think we also kind of got a little derailed here because we said this was going to be a cider episode, and we will get there. We just had 4 IPAs.
we promise. Ciders are coming.
They're not just any IPAs. We didn't grab Goose IPA. Logan brought us 4 from Treehouse.
Yes,
So
Logan pulled out.
I mean, they weren't originally gonna be for you guys, but
We appreciate it, Logan.
yes,
But
we
you
appreciate
love us.
I'm a generous guy.
sharing is caring.
So we're finally getting around to it after our run of IPAs that Logan had brought and introduced himself to the Your Brain on Hops family with. We're finally going down to
Applause,
the
Logan.
yes.
There was much rejoicing.
Finally going down into something we've never discussed before: ciders. It being the fall time of year, it being October, you see an abundance of them coming out, and along with the fall beer craze and everything. But going off a little track on something that's also fermented. So I had brought in 1911, made in New York, from Lafayette, New York, cider donut hard cider.
Cheers to fall, everybody.
So
Cheers
Yeah.
to fall.
And this is definitely fall in a glass.
We also should have fall weather at some point, I think.
tomorrow when it drops down to
I was
53
going to
from
say,
like the
still 80 degrees
70s.
today.
Before we continue on, I did want to say we did forget one particular cidery tonight, and I don't know why we did that, and I did think about it, but I was trying to find something different. Mackenzie's.
Yes.
Mayer Brothers right here locally.
Love you, Mayer Brothers.
Big cider mill. And I also thought about why didn't I grab actual donuts from Mayer Brothers, but right now there is an onslaught of people down there drinking their cider slushies. So it'll have to be a different day.
So good.
But onto the cider. What's the general impression
I
of the...
fucking love this.
Do you get donut?
It's delicious.
I'm getting some donut.
You know what? I get sweet and a little spice up front, and then I feel like the end is just like total donut, like that. Just that fried donutty goodness.
Cakey?
It gets that immediate off the tree apple bite that you get when you go to like an actual apple orchard. That's
especially the aroma of it.
Yes, as soon as we open the cans, and then that end hit there is just all donut, which is just fantastic.
Yeah. Even looking at the can, so on the can for our listeners, there's a bunch of donuts that, like your basic donut shape that has powdering on it. So your cinnamon powdering. When I'm looking at that and drinking this, the two are just connecting immediately.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you have not yet gone to an apple orchard to try the cider and the apple cider donuts yet, you should. What is wrong with you? There are so many around, and they're awesome
when they're fresh. When you get them as fresh as possible, that is one. That is one they're key.
My wife and I and our son Landon, we went with other family members to Smith's up in Lockport, and they were great. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was cheap. It's like whatever it was, 99 cents a pound for apples, and we bought like 2 bags of them and got some cider slushies. And
you actually pick up a little nuttiness in this just from something caramelizing. And I will say one thing. So I went to a place I usually don't normally go to buy beer, and that's Consumers. Usually it's when I'm in a rush, and I kind of forget it because I associate them with the big packs. You're trying to rush, you got a party, you got a lot of people or something like that. And I always go into the store, and I just look around and I try and find something. And I do find occasionally something that I really like. For some reason, I have never actually walked into their cooler. And I've never realized the fact that I could walk into their cooler. So that's where I found this, and
it's kind of the name of it, isn't it?
Well, yes.
Walk-in cooler?
No, it isn't, because it's Consumer Beverage Center. So I'm looking at the walls of coolers, but I didn't realize I could go back into the actual refrigerated.
You didn't see the doors.
I honestly didn't. I honestly have never seen it, so it was like blinders on, and I just saw this guy walking out with like 30 packs of Labatt Blue, and I'm like, I can go in there?
That's a lot of 30 packs.
The man, I don't know where he was going, but hey, he had a plan. So I walked in.
It was at his house instead.
I walked in, and it was like, I was like, holy shit, why have I never done this before? And I kind of went into this Willy Wonka mode of just frolicking. I'm like, la 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 la.
So somebody opened the door to go in, and they just look in, and they see Dan prancing on the aisles.
He's Peter Griffin in the brewery, not Willy Wonka. Peter Griffin. Let's be clear.
And that's where I ended up finding this on the shelf, and I was like, here is not a... Because all their ciders in the store, they're kind of separated, because you see the classic. You see the Miss Kenzie's, you see...
And they throw Red's Apple Ale
Red's
in there.
Apple
Sorry,
Ale.
No.
It's all together, and I'm like, this isn't what I really
Not
want.
actually a cider.
Their craft and their good stuff is in the cooler, and I'm like, God damn! And then, of course, I see Sip of Sunshine, and I see all these things, and I'm like, so that's where I need to go.
The fridge. Also, it's something we should note. I didn't realize this at first. It is a 6.9% ABV.
I don't pull my
cider.
punches, Tim. I don't pull my punches.
It's
Yeah.
probably from the brown sugar they add.
Yeah. Holy cow.
But
Yeah, it doesn't come across hot at all.
No.
but
I wonder how it's going to be when it warms up a little bit.
I was wondering. I was thinking about that. Like people like. I'm not a big fan of hot cider. I
Oh,
like
you shut
ice
your
cold
mouth.
cider. I know. I'm a heathen that way.
I like them
But
both.
I was wondering what this would taste like warm. Or would that
my
be bad?
favorite thing to do is the Special Reserves Mackenzie Hard Cider crock pot. Take a 6-pack, dump it in. Now, hear me out.
Eh?
Cinnamon stick, clove, orange slice, splash of bourbon, and slowly warm it. Just take a mug, dip it in, and just start drinking it.
You can tell which one of us is the chef in the room.
I want to make a slushy out of this.
Yeah. Why isn't there a hard cider slushy?
If anything, I can see it coming in the very near future, especially in the lovely town of East Aurora, because we're about to, down the line, get a cidery.
Oh, yeah?
So that's going to be opening up. So if anything that sells also craft beer, that's the perfect chance to do it.
Yeah.
Send us all down during the East Aurora Music Fest with alcohol slushies in hand during the summer.
When will there be a cidery?
I'm not sure
Yeah.
when it's going to be opening. They're now in the production of turning the building over and building it.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to do with it
Yes.
right now.
Is there a name?
I don't know the full details. I actually believe it is partly owned by Mayer Brothers.
Yes.
I think it is. I don't know. I probably wrong. I think it's the son who's opening it.
Does present a problem.
So
I don't believe Chris will be able to walk there from work.
Oh, it's going to be more than 5 minutes. away.
Yeah. He's
it'll
not
be
gonna
more than
do
5
it.
minutes,
Challenge
but it'll be less than 2 minutes from Aurora Brewworks.
Ooh, cheers to Aurora.
Yeah, it's probably across the street. pretty
Yes.
much, actually. And Aurora Brewworks did actually have hard cider slushies
Yes, they did it
this
first.
past summer.
And
Took
wine
a
slushies.
Real American cider, and then sometimes they would blend it with either a pineapple juice or like a strawberry juice or something like that, just to give it a little something different.
So once again, go local
Yeah, no.
and go to your local establishments, and you get a special treat. But on to the alcohol the content that you guys were talking about, and why ciders are so were prevalent to Americans, and mostly because we could not drink water.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, water was filthy and still is in some time. Sorry, Flint, Michigan. Any listeners out there? Water can still be pretty bad. But back in
Unfortunately,
the
we
day,
can't even make
especially-
alcohol out of that water.
No, there's no saving it. But yeah, it's just, and the history of the world. If you look at it for a long time, the clean water was hard to come by. I mean, even in Roman times, they had actual early plumbing, but the water was still not clean. They bathed in it, and then they would drink it later. Like that
Isn't
was
that
not
how
a
the
thing.
plague started or something?
No. The plague was rats with fleas, and it's a longer story, but no time for a whole history lesson here.
Come on, bring it on,
But-
Tim.
Going to the plague, like one of the things that got people out of the spread of the plague was drinking things like mead and early ales and beer, because that was what cleaned and purified the water. There are documentaries about this, which I thought were made up, and then I looked it up, and it was all factual. Like, this is what you did. You drank beer, and then there's always the tie-in where, people drank too much of it, passed out, were buried because they thought they were dead, and then,
Buried alive.
they quite weren't dead. And then you had the bells that would be hanging in the graveyards, and people would go nuts in their graves, shaking their hands because they were buried alive, and they were saved by the bell, so to speak.
Hopefully the gravekeeper
That's where that term came
wasn't
from.
drinking too much.
He's leaning against one of them with a growler in hand.
Cheers, man.
I drink too much. I hear this ringing in my head.
And that's also where you get the term
man.
graveyard shift.
Yeah.
Because the guy would stand guard in the graveyard, listening for bells, and I would think hoping none of them rang.
Yeah.
You never hope. I hope one of these guys wakes up. Like, I really don't think that happened.
But I mean, it was common that, I always think of it as a weird concept that in America, that we are, I guess, the legal drinking age in our country has gone up, while other countries usually stay pretty low. And it's not a responsibility thing, but it's almost a cultural aspect. Now in America, you can't change that. You can't go back because there'd be just some possible chaos on the streets. But at one point in time in American history, it was for everybody. It was kids. It was just because, hey, don't go drink the stuff out of the well because so just drank it and they had dysentery. So, exactly.
Background trout.
Instead, here, have this cup of cider we just made, and yeah, it had maybe a low alcohol content to it, but the kid was fine.
That's if they realize the causation. Another possible way that could have gone is
Yes.
that person's possessed. Burn them.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, found a witch. Really bad.
But yeah, when it comes to that, I tried to do a little research on cider making, and it's the process is a little simpler than beer making and stuff like that, but general principles still straightforward of what has to happen. Past job, I had a boss, and he loves the traditional way of doing things, hunting, skinning, all those traditional arts that you do intrigue him. And he knows that I used to do homebrewing. He asked me, he's like, how do you do a cider? And I started going into a brewing process. I'm like, yeah, you need yeast, you need sugar, you need all these things. And he's like, no. I don't want an airlock. I don't want a bucket. He goes, I want to know, how do you traditionally make a cider? how did they do it back in the day? And I tried to do a little research on it, and I couldn't find a damn thing. And I'm like, you had to have had a stone crock. I said, even the Chinese, I said, fermentation, just breakdown of sugars and acids and all these different things, and preservation. I said, at some point had to do something. It's like, but you had to have some type of airlock. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen. But I think that's the whole notion of why the fear of going blind happened.
Well, no, the airlock was something that was created so that we could actually keep things airtight.
Submerged.
Just so that nothing from outside could get in.
Yes.
So that we couldn't, there was no contamination.
But then
that
beforehand,
came much later on.
Exactly. So, but before that, I'm saying, how did you do it? Because you had to have a vessel, you had to have your ingredients, you had to have a wild yeast and sugar and something at some point. So when it did ferment, you didn't know your outcome of your product when you drank it. You just either knew, it doesn't taste too bad. And then, ooh, I feel something. Ooh, he just died. Here's the cutoff point. 3 glasses, no more.
Well, it goes back in the trial of error of early beer making. I mean, if you look as far as the Egyptians, I mean, they were, a lot of times, one of the misnomers of history is that the people who built the pyramids were all slaves. Well, they were paid in beer. The equivalent of a 20-pack of beer was given to each worker on the pyramids, and it was what Dogfish eventually used for the inspiration. I know we always mention them, it seems like. But their Tahenket beer, they found the old ancient recipe for the Egyptian beer, which was, I tried a bottle of it. It was very weird tasting, but interesting because, I mean, as someone who, I would never call myself a historian, but whenever there's a historical beer, I have to try it.
You are to us.
Oh, thank you.
Also, that's a very generous thing that they were paid in beer,
Right.
Versus the slave owners gave them beer so that their slaves didn't die, and that they had the strength to keep building the pyramids.
Yeah, well, they were able to take it home and trade it, or I'm assuming they drank it.
Beer was currency?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Beer
Imagine.
was currency.
Well, when you're not
Actually,
getting paid
going
in
back to what
actual
Tim said-
currency,
Yeah.
That's true.
like all that you were given,
Well,
that's all you have to trade.
when
you
you think
know,
about, I mean,
to keep your
prohibition,
family alive.
everything. I mean, essentially, alcohol saved the world a little bit.
There was a whole documentary
Richard-
about just that.
Exactly, alcohol saved the world,
Beer saved the world.
and it's down to not only just a sanitary thing of things you couldn't drink and keeping people alive and healthy, health-related items, but then also when you got to the 1900s and the 20s, prohibition and everything, and keeping businesses alive. It's like, hey, we can illegally sell booze because people really want it because they're fucking depressed.
I love the argument whenever you get, and this is not me entering into an actual political discussion. I'm just saying, when you talk politics and stuff, you can't change the Constitution. And I go, remember Prohibition? That sucked. So they changed it. Like, that's the beauty of it. You can change it.
Because you know that guy who's saying it?
in that-
He's drinking a beer while he says it.
It was interesting in that they not only changed it, but then they changed it back because it was such a bad idea.
Yeah.
So there was even a precedence for changing things back afterwards.
Exactly.
I also love that Yingling brewed beer before Prohibition ended, and then they sent it to the White House the day it was signed.
A thing that takes weeks or months was ready the day that Prohibition ended.
To quote the line from The Untouchables, when Elliot Ness is off duty and they ask him, what are they going to do? What are you going to do when they, eliminate Prohibition? We'll have a drink. Yes. We should all have a drink.
It's a class act.
Yeah. Great movie, too.
So moving on.
Hold on. Moving backwards, actually.
Moving back in time.
Based on how beer and cider and things were originally made, they would have been fermented with wild yeast.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have here is a wild fermented blueberry cider.
That was a good segue, Al.
Say cider.
Cider.
We're also talking about times when they didn't know quite what yeast was, if I'm not mistaken.
It was too tiny.
Yeah. I couldn't quite see.
Well, you had what? I mean,
Well, what
Still natural.
the Belgians called it God is good.
Yes.
God, those Belgians are amazing.
And then the line from Ben Franklin, which I'm not sure is quite from him, that beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. It's a new one. We got it.
The nose on this beer is so mild.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And like it tastes like a wildly
Tastes like
fermented beverage, but it does not smell that way.
Okay.
Oh,
I don't
sour?
get sour.
I'm
Definitely
getting sour.
unique.
But the thing is, they even say it. And I love the fact that they even put it in super dry cider with an H.
Where's it from?
CIDA.
Where in New England?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Born in Maine.
Maine. Okay.
Oh, that's
So,
For our listeners,
Like in the
this
car.
isn't us. On the can itself, cider is spelled CIDAH.
yes.
Cider.
But Maine organic blueberries added to our super dry cider contribute to a subtle fruitiness that complements a crisp finish. And, one of the things that I found interesting is the fact that when it came to ciders early on, they were dry. They were not the sweet, spiced drink that a lot of us think of today. I mean, even regular apple cider is a very sweet beverage, I guess, not even when it's alcohol induced. But back, it wasn't associated with sugar.
Right. All the sugar was used up naturally to
was
ferment
eaten.
the beverage.
So you ended up with a very dry product, almost more like a champagne than what we have now. And so I think it's interesting that in our industry, we've kind of, which I wonder if that's why you see more alcohol in it, because we've tried to up the sugar because we need more sweetness because people like it.
Not necessarily, because there's ways of controlling the amount of sweetness that you have. You can back sweeten things.
True.
Especially with a cider. I mean, you can back sweeten with fresh cider.
But do you think it plays on, we do see a rise in sours and beers and things like that, but do you think it plays into a human mentality? Because when humans were first roaming the earth and everything like that, when you had sour, you had bitter, things like that, sends a signal to your brain not to eat something. Mm-hmm. And that's when we relied on sugar, because sweet meant good. It was pleasant. You liked it. So your brain associates it, and we keep going with it.
What I'm hearing is there is an evolutionary instinct towards diabetes.
Wow.
The question I have
think
is,
that's the name of the show.
are we getting much blueberry out of this? That's my
Ooh.
question. It's called Wild Fermented Blueberry Cider.
Unfortunately, I actually think I'm getting too much cake residue from the last cider I had. Because all I smell is fucking donuts right now.
I am still getting a little bit of the spice from that and a little bit of the sweetness from it.
But as I'm saying that, God, that donut smells so good.
Mm-hmm. Do they do Uber Eats donuts? That's the question.
There's only one way to find out.
Go to Uber Eats.
So I don't get any, or I guess not much blueberry when I'm tasting it, but afterwards, it's almost like my tongue remembers blueberries.
You also got to think they're wild Maine blueberries, which are those tiny, not so sweet little ones, rather than like
the big
bush blueberries that you would buy at Tops or like a grocery store. And those have so much of like a more unique but it's like slightly subtle flavor whenever they get put into something. Which clearly they took on the color. The stuff pours.
Oh yeah.
Like pale purple. And
now who's the chef, Tim?
See, I think
Didn't know our
it says that they
producer
use
was,
locally farmed and foraged ingredients. So I'm wondering, were these all locally harvested and then thrown into a batch of cider to ferment it? So are they getting the wild yeast right from the blueberries and just throwing the blueberries in fresh to get that more of a natural, just here's what is on the blueberries that were in this beer or in this cider. Cider.
So using that instead of like an open fermentation method to make it
Right.
wild.
Right.
If you read the can, UFF Urban Farm Fermentory
that
is an
juice in there
experimental
instead or something.
fermentation factory, urban farm, and community engagement hub. We craft authentic products using locally farmed and foraged ingredients. Period. To sample our full selection of seasonal concoctions, visit our tasting room in Portland, Maine, and experience the culture.
Okay.
is this from a brewery or just a cidery?
The unfiltered craft cider.
I will let you know.
All right.
I don't like the fact that to read this I have to flip the can upside
Wait.
down.
You guys opened them already.
What? Oh, the sound.
No, you're supposed to shake the can. It says it on the fucking can.
Does it really?
Yes, that's why it's upside down. And I'll read this to you. So this is Down East cider.
I can do a
These
quick
fuckers. I should turn this upside down.
So there's font on every one of their cans. and it's upside down, and it says, "We know it's upside down." Why? Because the best way to drink our unfiltered cider is to shake it up first. And by turning this can over to read this, you're halfway there. Give it a shake, wait 10 seconds, and enjoy. Unfiltered, the way it should be.
Motherfucker.
So, that's not going to work, Dan.
It's gushing all over your hand.
Because it is slightly carbonated.
Yes, I know. We're going to wait 10 seconds right now. 10, 9, 8.
Wait. Our viewers don't need our listeners don't need a countdown, but I'm going to describe what's happening. You know those?
It worked for me.
You know those machines that shake the paint when you're buying paint in a store? Dan just looked like one of those machines with this can.
Chris, finish this because I'm doing vigorous pouring. Hey, I did a nice
There
stir.
you
And
go. Pour vigorously.
Now compare.
Yeah.
You can see particles.
You see all that floaty stuff
Yeah.
in Tim's glass?
It's darker too.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Floaties.
You shake
your
it properly,
non-particle.
and you're not going to see all those floaties that we're seeing.
Give it a little
So
stir.
where is this cider from, Logan?
So these guys, I want to say, are out of Massachusetts.
Somebody?
Yep. Fermented and canned by Down East Cider House, Boston, Mass.
I want some good stuff.
So Boston can do ciders too, huh? This is good.
So this is my favorite cider house, simply because of this wonderful unfiltered style
Yeah,
that they
someone
do.
take some of this.
Really good.
It's like true like mulled
The
cider
magic
kind of,
food,
you
Alex.
know. It pours and looks like a hazy IPA kind of. As opposed to a lot of the
Oh, here. Sorry. I was coming up the 42 north.
And almost like a cider.
yeah, exactly. As opposed to a lot of the sugary, malty apple drinks.
Right, that are like crystal clear and
Right, exactly.
this actually resembles more of like what you get at Mayer Brothers.
Exactly.
Yeah, pure cider.
Right.
So this is the original blend.
It is very good.
This is very good. Mm-hmm. This is what I want if I'm just drinking good cider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not nearly as carbonated either.
No.
So
No.
a lot easier to
Which
enjoy.
is why I'm impressed that it foamed up so much.
5.1%.
Was it getting a little higher? Not much. Not a 6.9, but still, I guess Mackenzie's special reserve that I like, I think is running around a 6.
The special reserve, yeah, I think so.
It is a 6%er. So that actually is kind of right on those. That is lower. I can't, for some reason, I have in my head that a cider will run probably around the same as like a 4.5 or something like that.
Yeah, I think most of them usually try to aim for their generic, like their flagship brands will try to run around 5%, most of them.
I've put a hydrometer into a Mayer Brothers cider, just regular cider. And it was, if you were to ferment it out and it fermented out clean, it would be around 4.5%.
Due to his scientific data. I'm pushing my glasses into my
As I
face.
say, they can't see what you're
Yes,
doing,
I
man.
know, I realize that.
Audience, I wish you did. I promise you, I will get a photo of that and put
One
it
day.
on Instagram. At some
One day
point.
will be a video podcast.
So as everyone was just talking about, the lack of just like a sweet cider. Do you think this is more like a original cider?
This
Like OG
tastes
back
like,
in the day where they weren't really going just for just a bunch of sugar?
This tastes like an unfiltered apple juice almost. It doesn't. I don't get booze,
Yeah.
which is
Not at
kind
all.
of
It's
like.
dangerous for the percentage.
Yeah.
I
But
can
you,
drink a lot
like you
of
said,
this.
when you don't like warm cider, when you warm up a hard cider, that's when you taste it.
Yeah. That's when you get the booze.
So it's kind of like if you drink sake or anything like that, you pick it up. It's like, ooh, there's this warming feeling that kind of flows through you.
It's
And you're like,
tingly.
ooh. It's like it's perfect for a warm, like not warm, Jesus, winter night.
It's a sensual experience when
It
Dan
really
drinks
Perks up the
sake.
nips.
Sake shower.
Here we go.
Right. Dan's back in the shower.
Calm
again.
down.
We've gone
Don't
like
tell me
4
to calm
episodes
down. You come up.
without a shower reference, and here we are.
That's a solid response. I can't argue with that.
I've already done the shower scotch. Why can't I do a shower sake?
Have you done a shower cider?
I have not.
How about a shower mead?
'Tis the time for it.
I'm just gonna put a bar in my shower.
Kegerator right next to it.
No, I'm thinking cut out the wall and actually just put it in the wall, so that I just open the door as I'm
full
showering.
on.
Like, today it's this.
Fully stocked bar.
Yes.
Glass
getting
glass
jellies on the
door.
rocks.
Oh, that does not sound great. Billy's on the rocks in the shower.
No. I love Bailey's on the rocks.
Cream,
not in the shower.
alcohol, and hot water.
All right, not my best idea.
It's a bad college party
Shower
waiting to happen.
White Russian or something like that.
If you can make it a cocktail, okay.
All right, we've been talking about it long enough. Showering and alcohol is now officially our third topic of the evening, in addition to selling out cider.
I still
And
haven't.
I have
I have
always-
yet to take a shower while drinking alcohol of any kind.
I've always
Timothy.
listen,
Really?
I
You've
never.
never?
have. No.
We've
Oh,
talked-
no.
Did you wait?
No,
did you
no.
go to college?
I did. No, I stand corrected. On my honeymoon, I definitely drank one of the crappy beers that were in the fridge, the El Presidente in the Dominican.
Yep.
I had one of those in the fridge.
I
In the
had
shower.
a number of those in the fridge.
Yeah.
Or in the
In the shower from the fridge. Yeah.
Now, did you enjoy the experience?
Yes, because I mean, showers are typically boring. You do in there, you wash up,
You're
do
not
your
doing it
thing,
right.
and you leave.
Showers are
You
wonderful.
add a beer to it, and it just
Water is
enhances the
wonderful.
experience. Even something as not that good tasting as an El Presidente.
Showers are fantastic.
No offense, Dominican Republic. You got some work to do.
I do my best thinking
But
when
when
I'm
it's
wet.
when you got the hot water and the cold beer, it's so nice.
It is.
Thank
point
you.
of
It is.
We have
point.
talked.
Yes.
We
the
have
shower.
talked about it on the show when it comes to temperatures, the thermal illusion, all these concepts. Hot shower, cold beer. You got
Now,
to play with that dial a
if
little
you-
bit.
Listeners, if you would love to re-listen to our shower beer talk, listen to episodes 1 through 20.
But I have playing with the dial is key. You must have. I like to get the water as hot as I can
Playing
take
with the
it,
dial.
and then you reach for the super cold beer.
What's the dial?
Yeah.
the? I don't know what you want to call it. You gotta.
The flosser? You
what do you
mean?
call
Like
it?
the-
No,
the-
no. What would you call it? The handle?
He's not
No,
talking
the
about the
valve,
handle, the
what-
faucet.
Say
What-
knob. That sounds awkward. in the shower.
What do you call
I
it?
don't,
Grab the
I don't want to know
knob.
what you do with the knob in the shower.
And the
So
bullocks.
Twist it to the hot position.
that is key. Take
You all just reverted to middle school right now.
hot as it can go, then you reach for that cold beer. It's steamy. Oh, it's good.
The sound effects were incredibly needed right there. This is the reason we have not done a shower beer episode.
I will do one from the
We
shower.
should totally do that.
I'm gonna have Logan.
I'm so down for that.
I'm gonna have Logan just sit in the bathroom recording as I'm in the shower.
He's got his blindfold on and everything. He's ready to go.
I'm gonna tell him, Logan, you can leave. I'm coming out.
How many times has Dan said that? Logan, you can leave. I'm coming out.
Dan, you've said so many great things.
I have. I can keep going all night.
Another great thing.
I don't know where to
Cider
go.
is great, guys.
Yeah, how do we go
Pumpkin
from
one.
cider to
Showering.
Dan coming out of
I
the
don't know,
shower?
but I'm watching you shake those beers, and it is delightful.
Well, on topic, I guess.
Yes, I tried to
Now
keep
he's
it there.
done.
Now we must wait 10 seconds as directed.
Actually, while we're waiting, shout out Tom Pafk, avid listener of this podcast. The little bits in here made me think of him. He loves those little bits.
The little
when they pour
yeasty
into a beer.
beasties.
Yeah, as he calls them, the protein of the beer.
That's right. Yep. Hangover cure.
Hey, it does make it feel
That's
better.
fiber.
Yeah.
I smelled pumpkin the second you cracked that.
Oh, immediately the pumpkin pie spice jumps out at
It
you.
must be too confusing.
God bless Logan. I'm not close enough to smell this pumpkin spice.
Oh, wow. That'll kick you in the face.
No, I am.
Don't let it.
Oh, I let it full on sweep
Press
the
the
leg.
pour.
So these are the pumpkin blend, the seasonal release from down east. Same thing, unfiltered blend of apples. This now also has pumpkin and delicious chai spices.
Now this is fall in a glass.
Well, it
Pumpkin
also
and apple?
It does actually say if fall were a drink, it'd be this.
Great minds.
Oh.
Fuck pumpkin.
Don't
I
Now
said
we
it.
enter the fourth segment where we debate pumpkin.
Dan, I thought we were done with your nighttime activities.
This is why
I'm never done with my
pumpkin
nighttime
episode.
activities. Otherwise, it
One
wouldn't be
guy that would
nighttime
do it.
activities. It would just be pre-evening
Daytime
activities.
activities. Were you looking for the opposite of nighttime and came up
That would be
short?
daytime. Last I checked.
I'm used to that too. So
All right.
Back to point. This is delicious. I'm getting a obvious huge hint of pumpkin, which I
Are you-
realize is not actual
are you getting pumpkin? Because I'm getting
flavor.
chai spice.
Yeah, it's more chai spice.
It is
than
a lot
pumpkin.
of chai spice. I realize, as I've been educated by our comrade here, that pumpkin spice, it's the spice you're getting, not the pumpkin, which is delicious.
It is. I'm not saying it, but when everyone tells me I love pumpkin this, do you really?
See, that would be an interesting thing to do, especially something like this, is have some actual pumpkin. Like, maybe not raw, cook it, do whatever. Don't alter it too much. Don't add too much spice to it if you do cook it up. But have that, like, take a bite of that so you have pumpkin fresh in your mouth, and then taste this and see if you actually do
don't
get
get me wrong,
pumpkin.
More chai.
Or if you're
Yeah,
just getting
taste.
apple and chai.
Yeah, it's a lot
Roasted
of chai.
yams, sweet potatoes, pumpkins, they are delicious.
We could also
Put it in a beer. It's gonna be very earthy toned. We're not picking that up. We're, like you said, chai spice is a completely different animal.
Not to mention, pumpkin is one of the most mild of like pure flavor. Pumpkin's one of the more mild of those fruits that you just mentioned.
Cinnamon is strong. It's in your face. It's,
And also with the pumpkin being so subtle, it's very fermentable. So are they utilizing some of the starches from it to actually get the sugar?
Maybe.
So if that's an aspect of it too, that's fermenting out. You're not going to get a lot of that flavor.
Right.
So there's definitely pumpkin in it, but that doesn't make it over to what you're tasting.
Right. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to come through in the flavor.
We're also ignoring the fact that Dan could have just replaced the Gene Wilder meme that is very popular with his own "really" as he put his head on his hand pose that he
They
did that
can't
you
see
couldn't
what I'm
see.
doing, Tim.
I'm describing it. You pretty much had the same pose of the meme and the same sarcasm that he is hinting at. Rest in peace, Gene Wilder.
Any of
Do it
our
again, Dan.
listeners, if you're into, well, I guess
gonna have
graphics
to
at
go
all,
live
but
one day.
also memes, and you want to make a meme of Dan as Gene Wilder, in that
As Willy
love to see
Wonka.
it.
Yes, Wonka. You know what we're talking
no,
about.
oh,
more
God,
time.
my Facebook is gonna hurt now.
Your Facebook is gonna
My
hurt.
Facebook hurts.
Dan,
I
one more
found
time.
that. No. Oh, fine. Post it. Watch Chris draw on it.
I will draw.
No, we won't be adding it to that group chat because that will just end in
Goblins.
terrorizing things.
We have mentioned Instagram a lot. If you don't follow us yet, we're at Brain on Hops. So go check us out.
Steal our photo.
There's-
Send it back to us though, with your best drawing of me as Gene Wilder.
With a hat.
Yeah, or the crazy hair. But
That works.
our Instagram channel, pretty solid. It's mostly a lot of great shots of beer and Tim.
I mean, I could say I don't manage our Instagram, but I am the one that frequently thinks, hey, I'll post this on Instagram. 'cause
You do.
I'm new to the Instagram world.
Also, you and like props to a lot of breweries nowadays that they're family friendly, but you will go visit a lot of breweries
do.
with your family
I do.
and have a good time there and take some photos.
Yeah.
And,
And the bonus of Logan being on the show now, or producing it, on it, is that I am not the only guy who's married with a kid here. That is
It's
a
true.
thing.
And I'm going to be honest, my daughter has been to every bar that I have been to since she's been born.
Cheers to that.
Seriously. Because, I mean, when she was little, she barely made a peep. She was just asleep in a car seat the whole time.
Yes.
Anyway. And now, she eats the same foods that we do now that she has teeth.
Yep.
And
A plate of chicken wings and curry fries.
Yeah, like waiters, waitresses, bartenders all think she's adorable.
Yes.
So, and a lot of places, like you said, Chris, they really are family friendly because a lot of breweries try to have kind of that restaurant atmosphere. Obviously not all of them, but a lot of them do. And, and she's been to a number of breweries in the Buffalo area, as well as with me in Maine and Massachusetts too. So,
Hashtag proper parenting.
I echo that. I mean, we went to Cape Cod. Landon came with us to 2, 3, maybe even 4 breweries. Probably 3. And then Maryland, pretty much every brewery we went to, he was there. Either as in his carrier or walking around running. His favorite thing to do is find the cornhole boards and dunk on the cornhole because his throwing arm isn't quite where it could be. But
Landon proper parenting.
yes.
that sounds adorable.
It is. And it's fun. I
screwed
mean,
that up.
And you can definitely check out, like, there's definitely ones we've been to where it's like, yeah, we shouldn't have brought him. Like, he's just gonna make a mess here. And then there's other ones where it's definitely, this is fun. He's having a heck of a time. And I mean, we mentioned in the Buffalo and Glass series how, places, like New York Beer Project, among others, that are just really good to bring your family to. And he had a blast there. He loves sports bars. It's noisy. People are shouting.
Sports
and
bar.
He can shout as loud as he wants. Yeah.
Now, actually, I'm curious. Logan and Tim, as people here with families, is there a standout favorite or maybe couple favorites in Buffalo that's you like bringing your kids to or good for a family day out?
Again, I echo New York Beer Project. Or not echo, I repeat that. It's a good one for me.
We have constantly had Sloan at Hydraulic Hearth, who do actually a lot of brewing for CBW before they moved into their new facility.
Quick question, outdoor, indoor, or both?
Both. For a long time, indoor, because good friends of mine who are members of, or who are owners of the Lomo Lomo food truck were doing brunch there on Saturdays, and it's not that far from our house at Hydraulic Hearth, so we would go there for brunch on Saturdays. Sloan would be there hanging out. She would have a bottle, and all the waitresses would swoon over her.
A bottle of what?
I assume she has discerning taste.
Kids are drunks.
Yes. Yeah. And we would have brunch, and we'd have a good time. And honestly, we were just there with her last night. And she's 1 year old now, and
There's a reason why they're so well behaved and quiet.
and she just kind of like hung out. We were outside yesterday.
It's called Form.
Eula.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So I like it there.
I want a beer named that now.
Yeah, New York Beer Product wins for me for Buffalo area, but down in Maryland, Johansson's was a good one. They're very friendly to kids there. And Monocacy or Monocacy, depending on how you pronounce it, in Frederick, Maryland. They're very, very friendly to kids there. It all depends. I mean, it depends on who you have there. I mean, you definitely meet the bartenders that are like, oh, great, you have a kid. That's fun. And then there's the, oh, you have a kid. Like, there's definitely a different reaction.
The ones that are like, oh, let me put out a dish of water for the kid. Stuff like that.
He's not a dog. He's not a dog.
I'm not
You tell
super
he's
sure
not
how
a
kids
parent.
work.
Yeah,
Really,
and
if I brought Landon here,
What are
it
these
would be a
little
dog
humans?
dish of water.
I would put out a dish of water for her. I am a good host.
Is there another cider?
His cider.
You don't have any other cider, right?
No, it was just those two.
So we go to a homebrew.
This is a homebrew.
Is this a cider?
This
Or
is not a
this
cider.
a different category of something we've never touched upon?
What about the rest of
These aren't my
This
keys.
is exciting, listeners. We're moving to a
We're going
Buckley
into new
brew.
territory.
This is a mead.
Grab your towels.
It was like, it's Chris's house. He
For
probably has a
shit's
bottle.
sake, I'll get a...
Jesus.
Booyah!
Well, he's heating up.
Wow, that thing just shot right off.
Whoa, there was some kick to this one.
Yeah, you're not going to want to drink
Yeah,
that.
yeah, a
Why
little
did
bit.
we pour full glass?
What the hell, guys?
I was wondering what the hell you were doing, Dan. This is
I have no regrets.
This is a honey bourbon barrel aged mead,
Oh yeah, I forgot about
and
this
not
one.
really a barrel aged. It was more of a honey bourbon soaked oak aged.
That's too many labels.
Exactly.
not.
so I
It's
say
delicious.
honey bourbon
That's just the
barrel
right amount of labels. So I love honey, and this is fucking phenomenal.
This is one of my favorite
Very
things
good.
that Alex has done, and my story for it was that Alex had given me a couple bottles of his homebrew to take home and cellar or to have in the fridge, and I had 2 bottles in the fridge, and I couldn't remember which one was which. And I was just looking for something, actually probably for a shower beer, and I was like, all right, this is the last round of the night.
Shower mead.
Well, I cracked it open, and I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be something light. I forgot it was the mead that I'd taken. And what did this mead come in at?
14%.
Yes. Jesus. So I poured it, and I was like, no, I
You
wanted.
guys just got poisoned.
Yeah. So I wanted,
Dun, dun.
and I was disappointed in myself because I wanted to save it for something else, like a nice, make myself a nice dinner or something. I was like, well, I guess I'm drinking this now. So it was down the hatch, and I went to bed a little tipsier than I thought I was.
The whole
That's the
bottle.
problem.
I drank the full 12-ounce bottle.
That's not the same one at 14%, is it?
Correct.
Jeez.
Why do you think
be
you
here
looked at me? It's like,
till
yeah, I wasn't
11:30.
sure what you were doing, Dan.
Yeah.
Some of
Dan's
us work in
sleeping
the
on
morning.
that couch.
Yeah, that's what you think.
It's so smooth.
It's very small.
Unbelievable with the amount of flavors that you get out of this.
We can pour it back into the bottle.
You can pour it here.
We're into Alex's glass.
Yeah, Alex, come here, glass. There you go, Chris.
I live pretty close, so I'm okay.
I gotta ride the throughway, so Chris, where's your glass?
More for me.
This is actually only the
Give
second
me a little bit
mead I have ever brewed.
Well, it
Not
turned out
bad,
splendid.
sir.
Catch the
Yeah.
chips.
The first one was awful. It was terrible.
I mean, honey wine. I mean, so 14 is actually right around exactly where it should be.
Right. That
Personally,
makes sense.
if I'm going to do another one, I'm going to drop it down a little bit
Don't.
because
What would you aim for, particularly?
eh,
Like closer to 10?
yeah,
12?
10 to 12 in that area. That's kind of where I want it. It's mostly for I want to be able to drink this, and I know how much I can drink of like a 10% beer. So when it comes to a 10% beverage, I feel like I'm comfortable drinking what I know I can drink.
So that makes sense. So you want to drop it down because drinking a 12 ounce, like if you pour it in a bunch of 12-ounce bottles and you drink one of those, you know you're going to be fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
If you drink a 10-ounce or 10% of a 12-ounce bottle, you know, okay, I'm going to be here. That's fine. I can handle that.
Right.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah. Plus, you'd probably still get the same taste, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other big thing is, I mean, it's a lot less honey, and honey's expensive.
Yeah, it is.
This was 17 pounds of honey.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow. Jesus.
How did you... I'm assuming you just didn't go to the store and buy like 400 of those teddy bear honey things.
Niagara Tradition, the homebrew store. So where I get all my brewing ingredients, they sell massive things of honey. And actually,
Is it
an entire
is it in
gallon?
honeycomb, or is it just like
No, it's
pure honey?
It's pure honey.
Yeah, okay.
Like you'd buy it in the bear.
Right.
Except these are 12 pounds is 1 gallon jug, like a milk jug. 1 gallon milk jug full of honey is about 12 pounds.
Wait,
Yeah.
really?
Yep.
That's crazy.
That's-
I would not have expected a 1 gallon jug would have been 12 pounds of honey.
It's dense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's
dense
a
with
pain in the
goodness.
ass to get all of it out, too.
That's what she said.
Oh yeah.
Oh. Tim.
I had to.
Oh, God.
Always got Michael Scott on the mind.
So I have an interesting question. With like the popularity of ciders rising, I feel like it comes from the whole idea of people looking for beer that doesn't taste like beer. Either that, or people who don't like beer looking for something to drink.
With a kick.
You know, that's what's like a lot of even craft places will always have a cider on for those who
very
don't
true.
like craft beer. They're afraid of IPAs or anything like that.
Don't want something better.
You're starting to see more wines show up,
Right.
even in a bar or something
Right,
like that.
exactly. But the interesting thing with mead is in a lot of, even in craft places, you see it kind of grouped together with ciders. But I mean,
Apple,
sometimes
cherry, all those flavors kind of play hand in hand because you can do the same things flavor-wise, but your alcohol content does go up, and you don't. But I think with meads, you don't get as much carbonation.
right, yeah, and that's the other thing is, and sometimes you get ones that have bizarre fruits in them, or they have, or they're like this one, they're whiskey barrel aged or something like that. That, I mean, somebody may be looking for a mead. Oh, it's a honeyed wine or it's a honeyed ale or something like that. It's going to be really sweet. But then it gets turned around on them where they've got, bourbon and smoke and all types of things into it. So I guess the question to you guys would be is mead gonna ride the coattails of cider, as well as while cider rises like this, or is it gonna have to kind of be its own thing? Because you are seeing mead definitely become more and more popular, but is it becoming popular because it's being grouped in with the ciders and those people looking to not drink beer are going for it, or is it really coming into its own thing?
I think it depends on where people are, because I know at ABW you have everything, so you have those options for people. Not a lot of places have mead. Not a lot of places have mead
Unless you're
to
specifically
be able to
at
do
a
that.
winery that wants to focus and they do a little something extra along with the wines that they have.
Right.
When they do something like that, then yeah. But if that's the case, you like sweet wine, it's just a little something fruity, or maybe a little something different. When it comes down to beer, and I'm not trying to say anything, but when you start to bring those things in, and I know for some businesses it was because, well, your husband drinks beer, comes in, and you're on a night on the town. Nothing on the tap list for you because, well, you're not a beer fan. Females aren't. They were just so. Well, wait. We've got wine. We've got something a little sweeter. We've got ciders. We've got meads, and that's where it comes into play. And it's almost a business aspect of it because we want to include everybody. And you don't see many. I mean, you don't see too many guys go for super sugary sweet.
Well, now speaking of the business aspect, and Alex, you might be able to answer this. Does it cost more to make mead than to make the equivalent amount of beer or cider? Because I know in your example you said with the amount of honey, sure.
I would say yes up front. The amount of honey, I mean, I guess when it comes to the beer ingredients and the amount of grapes you would need for a wine, things like that, I think it's still on the higher side. I mean, especially for a 14%. I think it's more for a place that's only doing mead. It's a long time. It takes a long time to get the product actually finished. So your vessels are taken up by product, and you're trying to turn that product over. So it's more of the overhead of it that's going to cost the most in the long run.
So more inventory on the shelf, more startup costs to do that.
Well, it's just more time in between batches.
Would you need custom equipment, or could any brewery say,
That
"Hey,
I don't know.
We can commit a few of our current resources. Let's make a mead."
That I don't know. And I think you actually need a different license to be able to do mead. You couldn't actually
really?
make a
It's,
mead off of a brewery license, I don't think.
Interesting.
Just like you can't make wine off of a brewery
You
license.
can't do liquor. You can't. It's all separated.
Yep.
To counter to Logan, to me it seems, if I were to see anything, I would see cider, and I would see meads start to separate from the craft beer world. You do occasionally get your dry hop ciders and things like that, but because of the way they come out, you see, I mean, mead is a honey wine. Its alcohol content is closer to wine, its tastes, things like that. You can have a little more play with them. And ciders, depending on how you put, you can get a fruity characteristic, you can get a sweetness out of them, but you can also get a very dry sensation like a champagne. Just like you would with a wine category. Semi-sweet, semi-dry, and that's how they categorize a lot of their ciders.
And you can do that with mead as well.
Exactly.
You can dry out a mead and make it more champagne-like as well.
Yes. I would see those two products kind of going down the wine trail. And I think you will see that. I think you do see that.
Trail.
Yeah, I know. More and more as businesses grow, as breweries, cideries, wineries all come into play, I think you'll see them kind of each come into their own and focus on something. And whatever plays out, they're gonna be like, "Hey, we're doing this."
I really hope so. And I mean, your question was about mead being on the coattails of ciders or just kind of doing its own thing. I mean, either if it does ride the coattails and that helps it, cool. If it does manage to do its own thing and kind of break out and become more popular, great. Because I really like mead, but I think also it's a bit harder. And I mean, when people go out to drink, they're not. I mean, this is a craft beer podcast. We're all craft beer drinkers. So when we go out, sometimes or a lot of time, it's I want to try new things. I want to experiment, do stuff like that.
I don't want to
When
drink
most
6
people go out
glasses
to
of
drink,
mead.
Yeah.
it's to have fun with the people that they're out with, whether it's a date, a group, happy hour with coworkers, whatever it is. I don't really know if they want to experiment and be like, oh, this mead is very interesting. Or if they just want to go to a beer, not to mean macrobrewery necessarily. They could be part of a group with like IPAs, for example. And they'll go out and they'll try different IPAs. But that IPA group isn't going to go, ooh, that honeyed mead sounds really interesting. I'm going to try that today, because they want to have fun and just be part of the group and all that. So I don't know about its commercial popularity. I really hope it gets to a point where it's economically viable, at least, where it's available at a lot of different places, because I think mead is fantastic. But I really haven't seen that developing too much, other than at like craft beer shops or bottle shops, things like that.
Gotcha.
I see it on the rise with, once again, tradition. New Year's Eve, clock strikes midnight. You don't like champagne? Have a nice cider. A little bubbly, nice, dry. Same thing.
You could even do a sparkling mead.
Sparkling meads, things like that. I think it's going to play towards the wine characteristics more than it is towards the beer. I don't actually ever think I've seen a beer labeled as semi-dry or semi-sweet before. It's that's beers.
Even though we have that,
yeah, you can get sweeter characteristics,
we
but
just
you don't
don't
usually
talk about it.
categorize them that way. You say
Later,
hoppy,
much more
bitter,
popular.
they're citrusy.
Different labels.
Yes.
As opposed
The thing
to
is,
dry or sweet.
I've only seen, like, I agree with you that it does definitely lend itself more to the wine crowd and that kind of tastings.
Absolutely.
But I've only seen mead really at like beer bottle shops or beer bars, craft beer places.
Go into a wine store.
If I go, well, no,
Right, yeah.
and that's a wait. Like
A winery,
wine
they'll have,
only
no,
store.
Wineries, no, just
You're not talking about like places like Premier where they have.
No, I'm talking Premier Liquor.
No, not
but-
that. They have a whole beer selection. I'm talking like
Gotta go
for
to
that
the other side.
wine only crowd.
Well, it's okay, but the thing is,
I've
because
never-
it's a honey wine, you can still find it, but I don't think many people look for it because meads is still fairly new.
But is it there because of the wine or because of the beer? I think it's there because of the beer.
No, I think it's the
Because-
exact opposite. Because I think
No.
if you're in a Premier, you're not seeing so much beer, you're seeing more wine and liquor.
I would have to agree with Chris. I think it's there because of the beer. Because I
disagree.
feel like people who have started off with, the light beers that we all started with, got a little adventurous and started getting into craft beer. We're looking for new things. And I feel like that is more down our path than the wine person's.
Yeah, if I go to a beer bottle shop, I think I'd be able to find a mead. If I go to a wine shop or a winery, I don't think I'd be able to find a mead
Then
there.
you're shopping at the wrong place.
I'm not talking about mass, like
But-
Premier has everything. I'm not talking about that.
No,
I'm
but
talking
I'm
about
saying
like
if you're at a,
if you go to a wine only shop,
you should be able to find a mead. If you cannot find a honey wine
If
in
you are
a wine
if you are
place,
looking for a mead though, you should stay local and go to Lily Bell Mead in Lancaster.
yeah,
their meads are phenomenal.
They are
Uh,
incredible.
Midgard.
This was actually
Is that the name of the place?
I made this right after I had tried a whole bunch of
Midgard
theirs. I
Meadery,
was like,
think
"Yep,
it is.
time to
They're
make another
another
mead."
local one. I could be wrong.
Really?
Yep.
I don't play that. So their meads are inspirational.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
It inspired me to say, "Hey, I brewed a shit ton of beer. I'm gonna try mead again
That's
because the
that's
first one was
great.
awful."
This is a great opportunity to any of our listeners that are of the more wine drinking variety. If you have something to weigh in on this, a comment on when we post this podcast would be very helpful.
Definitely.
What do you think?
On the on that note, they were at Full Circle Fest.
Yeah.
42 North Festival.
Yep.
They also, and it might just be meads in general, but I don't know if they had any 14%ers there. But they did skew higher. I think all the meads they brought were double digits, and they were all delicious.
Yes, they were. They had a dry hopped one too.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I don't know if I had that one when I was there.
Yeah, that was good.
I'll have to go to the meadery. Oh, shucks.
Oh,
Gotta make a trip.
Don't you hate that time? when you
Oh
have to
no, we
go
gotta
to
go
the
drink
brewery
more.
meter?
Oh no.
So I say we agree to disagree. But we are looking forward to the future of everything.
I agree to more research.
Yes.
To research!
To research.
Cheers to that.
I think this is a good time to kind of wrap it up because with a 14.9% mead that what?
Not 0.9.
We're going 14 straight.
Feels like 14.
Sorry.
Is
Drunkenness is adding
0.9 gonna
0.9.
make that much of
I'm
a difference
feeling
at
like
that
this
I'm
is
so
a little bit more.
I'm so sorry I've insulted you, Alex. But I think it's a good time to wrap everything up. All right.
Totally.
Well, guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode.
American Pie.
Welcome, Logan, to our wonderful beer
Yes.
drinking craft family.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
he will be back because he's going to be editing all of our episodes, and hopefully they sound a hell of a lot better from here on out.
Hopefully he
And-
brings more Treehouse.
Ooh, yes.
I wouldn't count on that. I've seen what you guys do
Trillium?
with Treehouse when I bring it.
I don't know, man. You set the bar pretty high.
It's like when you
It's
throw.
all downhill from here.
Shows
Yeah,
up at Coors
we're gonna
Light
see you
next.
next time with a domestic episode. So stay tuned for that one.
Us in Treehouse is like when you throw like a piece of meat into a pool of piranhas.
But from all of us, cheers, everybody, and we hope you had a great time.
Watch it.
Cheers.